Hi guys, so I've given you a bit of a week off to try and catch up with your Jekyll and Hyde stuff, make sure that you've read the novel, and also to get on top of your work for Miss Millard because she's doing the paper 2 section B stuff. I know some of you will have been in school this week and you'll have started the section A part of paper 2, which is brilliant. I'm teaching next Thursday to year 10. And hopefully we can start moving with this because normally we would have finished paper 2 by now, really, or we'll be finishing by now and we will be doing a mock with you. It's not the end of the world because normally we have enough time in year 11 to basically reteach all of paper 2 and revisit paper 1. So whilst we have lost teaching time, it's not ideal. We do have stuff in place and I've got a bit of a plan. So I don't want you to stress about it, but I do need you to get it done because the more stuff you're not doing at home, the harder it's going to be when we get back. So what I need you to do today is have a look on the VLE at the work that I've attached. So I've attached a copy of the question. So I've had to print mine in red because my printer's run out of black ink. This is the extract here, and this is the question down here. And if you do have a printer and print, get your highlighters ready. If you do not, then pull my document up on your laptop or iPad or whatever, as a Word document, obviously, that's what it's saved as. And then when you highlight things, if you want to write a comment next to it, so if you want to highlight and write notes in the side, I don't know if you've ever done this before, maybe you have, you go to review. So on the top bar, you've got file, home, insert, etc. You go to review and then write just left of where, like basically underneath where it says the word review, you've got a box that says new comment. So if you've highlighted something and then you click new comment, it will then pull up a box on the right hand side that you can type notes in. So if I highlight that very first sentence of the extract, my devil had long been caged, he came out roaring, and I put in new comment, I can write in there extended metaphor to describe the evil inside him and the fact that he knows it's evil but he likes being evil. Okay, so I can put all the things that is going on in my brain when I start thinking about this question. So obviously if you're doing it on paper you're going to be highlighting and then annotating in pen, but if you're doing it on the computer I highly recommend that you use the review and the new comment section because then you can see all of your thoughts as you're going through. Now, because we're working on exam technique, I'm going to give you some ideas, but I'm not going to do the answer for you. Now, this question is a 30-mark question. There's no spag marks, but please can you try and make it so it's legible and easy for me to read, but there are no specific spag marks for this question. So it's out of 30. You have 45 minutes in the exam to answer it, okay? If you have extra time, I think that puts you, I think I worked it out at 56 minutes, so please, if you do have extra time, give yourself that. Now, what I recommend you do for this one is, because you probably haven't done one timed before, I can't imagine you timed yourself on the others, I would like you to time yourself. So once you've done your plan, I want you to spend one of the lessons this week planning and following my plan that I've put on the PowerPoint and following the things that I'm going to say to you in a minute on how to do it. And then I want you to just sit down and write it. So already you've sort of got a little bit more time than you would normally have because normally within that 45 minutes you would need to plan and then write. However, we're building up baby steps. Now, what I will say is that if you are writing and writing and writing and you get to the end of your 45 minutes and you think, I've still got 2 really good points to make, just put a little mark in, so obviously you'll probably be typing, won't you? If you're typing, just put a little, a dash or put a big thing in red saying, this is where my 45 minutes were up, and then carry on writing. And then if you could let me know at the bottom, I used an extra 20 minutes or I needed an extra 30 minutes here or however long it took you, that'd be really helpful. Or what you could do is you could just, put that section in green. So either way, I don't really mind. If you're handwriting, you're going to make it harder for me to mark, and I am going to be marking this properly, and I've put the criteria on the VLE task as well. However, if you can't put it on a Word document and you can't type it, then you will have to handwrite it, and you have to take photographs of each page, but you need to do it nice and close up for me. And I'll probably be able to figure that out. But if you can type it, that is the ideal for me. Because then what I'll do is, when I'm reading it, I will use the new comments box under review, and I will actually write comments as to why you've got the marks you've got, or where you lost marks, or where you could have done extra word level analysis, etc. Okay? So that's the ideal, is typey. So, with any work that we've done with essays, you start with the question. So, once you've printed this off or got it on screen, you will always get with an extract question, at the top it will tell you where it's come from. So if you look at the very top, it says extract from Jekyll's full statement of the case. So it's from the final chapter. So I'm just going to write on my bit of paper here. So it's the final chapter. Now we know that Stevenson, when he wrote this novel, has used a really clever structure where it doesn't come from Jekyll's point of view until the very end, until we already know the kind of things that Hyde's been getting up to. So it comes from Utterson's point of view. And it's really interesting that this is the final where all of the final details are revealed as to the motivation of Jekyll as to why he created Hyde. So before we knew about Hyde and he's this terrible, scary character, but we had no why. So this is the final piece, like the resolution, if I was going to use the proper term. So it then says, in this section, Jekyll is narrating what happened after 2 months of trying to give up being Mr. Hyde. He is describing the murder of Sir Danvers Carew. So you will recognise this bit, okay? And it's really interesting. I'm just going to highlight the bit where it says, after 2 months of trying to give up being Mr. Hyde. Because I don't know if you remember in that bit. He refers to things like the fall and falling to temptation, and he talks about the frailty of man quite frequently, about how we're weak, basically, and we give in to temptation. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to read this, and I'm going to stop and tell you bits where I think I would be highlighting. So in an exam situation, and what I want you to do, you don't have to use my highlights at all. I want you to read it, and I want you to highlight any bits that you think are relevant, okay? So the question is, at the bottom, Jekyll's account of the murder is shocking, and yet he is brutally honest about how much he enjoyed it as Hyde. In light of this, write about how Stevenson presents the conflict between Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde in this extract. Okay, so let's take the first bullet point. In this extract, we need 3 neon lines. Okay, however, we're not just going to limit ourselves to 3. What we're going to do is we're going to read it. You're going to pick out any bits that you think would be useful evidence to suggest that Jekyll is really conflicted with his relationship with Mr. Hyde. Conflicted meaning that he thinks it feels both amazing and terrible, and he knows it's bad, but he likes it as well, okay? So we're going to read it and highlight any bits that we think are relevant to that. Then after that, we're going to go and we're going to pick the biggest 3, the 3 that you think are the ones you've got the most to say about. They're going to be your 3 neon lines that you're going to start with, okay? So, my devil had long been caged. I don't know why I always get the word order wrong now. Let me start again. It's quite late in the evening, by the way. I'm tired reading this. My devil had been long caged, he came out roaring. I was conscious, even when I took the draught, of a more unbridled, a more furious propensity to ill. It must have been this, I suppose, that stirred in my soul, that tempest of impatience with which I listened to the civilities of my unhappy victim. I declare, at least before God, no man morally sane could have been guilty of that crime upon so pitiful a provocation, and that I struck in no more reasonable spirit than that in which a sick child may break a plaything. But I had voluntarily stripped myself of all those balancing instincts by which even the worst of us continues to walk with some degree of steadiness among temptations, and in my case, to be tempted, however slightly, was to fall. Instantly the spirit of hell awoke in me and raged. Without a transport of glee I mauled the unresisting body, tasting delight from every blow, and it was not till weariness had begun to succeed that I was suddenly, in the top fit of my delirium, struck through the heart by a cold thrill of terror. A mist dispersed. I saw my life to be forfeit, and I fled from the scene of these excesses, at once glorying and trembling, my lust of evil gratified and stimulated, my love of life screwed to the topmost peg. I ran to the house in Soho, and to make assurance doubly sure, destroyed my papers. Thence I set out through the lamplit streets in the same divided ecstasy of mind, gloating on my crime, light-heartedly devising others in the future, and yet still hastening and still hearkening in my wake for the steps of the avenger. I literally have no idea what's going on now. Okay. So we're trying to look at the conflict between Jekyll and Hyde, so where he feels that there's any sort of problematic element between the two of them. So I am going to start with, my devil had been long caged, although I think I misquote that every time. I'm pretty sure at GCSE I would still get the marks for that. So my devil had been long caged, he came out roaring. And I'm going to write extended metaphor there. Now, the thing that I've written in the notes on the VLE and the thing that I want to talk to you about now, squid is great, it's really useful. You do need a statement, you do need a quotation, you then need to use inference, you need to explain in your own words how that quotation, what the inference is that then links it to conflict and why you've picked it out. You then need word level analysis, okay? Now the thing with the literature essay is you always lead with argument. You do not lead with, Stevenson uses adjectives. That's not a literature essay, that's a language answer for a question. It's a short answer question, okay? So the question is, how does he present conflict? He presents conflict as though Jekyll has a wild animal inside him, and it makes him feel as if he can't control it all of the time. Okay, so that's my statement, not the fact that he uses the noun devil, which I am going to talk about, and I am going to use that, but I don't lead with that because that's not the exciting thing. When you read a literature essay as an examiner and as a teacher, they're actually supposed to be quite interesting to read. It's not just, oh, and they use a verb here, and they use an adjective here. That's the evidence, that's my proof, but that's not like the thrust of the essay. That's not what you're trying to show me you understand the book to be about, okay? So, in my notes, I'm going to write extended metaphor. I'm then going to circle the words that I want to do word level analysis on. I'm going to circle devil because it's got that link to the devil, sin, evil, badness, okay? And something diabolical. But I'm also going to circle the verb caged, to be caged, and also roaring, because I'm going to talk about the idea of being trapped and the idea that if you let something free and it's hungry, that wild, untamed, uncivilized, uncontrollable element of himself, okay? And I'm going to use those two verbs. Now, the thing with literature is if you just use squid and you just have one quotation, that quotation, and pick one word out. If you just do my devil and you talk about the devil and then you move on to another point, you've missed it. You've missed your opportunity to really double down on your evidence, okay? So from that quote, I'm going to use the noun devil and I'm going to use the verb caged and roaring. And I'm going to have quite an extended bit in the middle, which is inference, word level analysis, and the whole thing is going to be inference, okay? And it's going to be quite long and it's going to be quite detailed. I will get way more marks for that than just putting the quote and just talking about devil or just talking about roaring or just talking about caged, okay? That's too simplistic. That is not what I expect from a literature essay. So when I say squid, you kind of need to imagine that the quotation inference bit is going to be layered up like a sandwich. So instead of having like a little s and then the QUI in the middle and the d at the bottom, you're going to have an S up here, you're going to have you're going to have quotation, you're going to have word level analysis. Then you might even add another quotation if you wanted to. And then you're going to have a giant sandwich like this that you can't get your mouth around, and the development's going to be at the bottom, okay? So I appreciate you might not quite understand this to start with, and if you're thinking, oh my god, Miss, you're really confusing me, then stick with squid. But if you can stick with squid and maybe do more than one word from the quote, that's kind of what I'm talking about, okay? So, I'm not going to tell you any more from that particular paragraph. You can pick any other bits from that first paragraph that you want to, okay? When I actually read this chapter, I did go into quite a lot of detail about the juxtaposition of the words. So you've got the contrasting. So you've got words like delight, but he's talking about from the blow, from hitting somebody. You've got words like delirium, and then that's contrasted with the cold thrill of terror. And then you've got the oxymoron of the thrill of the terror. So you've got lots of techniques. So basically, I want you to go through this. You've got glorying, trembling, lust, gratified, stimulated, but then you've also got divided, it's talking about conflict, that's great, divided ecstasy of the mind, so he's like out of his head with the buzz that he's got from killing this guy, and then also the fact that whilst he's absolutely buzzing and walking around the streets of London after destroying the stuff in the cabinet place, he's still thinking that there might be he describes it as the steps of the Avengers, somebody coming to try and get him, so he's almost like enjoying the fact that he might get caught now. So he's really torn between the fact that Hyde's just done this thing that might get him caught. And actually we know that after this, he knows he's got the problem that Hyde has is that he is going to go to the gallows, because at this point he doesn't realise that he's been recognised, that he's been watched and seen by somebody. So highlight this, please. Pick out the bits and then go back and number 1, 2, 3. These are my 3 points that I really want to make about the conflict between Jekyll and Hyde. Okay? So that's your first section. Then what I want you to do, I want you then to go onto the PowerPoint and have a look at the spider diagram. And what I want you to do is I want you to just brainstorm what you think is the conflict between Jekyll and Hyde. So what is he talking about? He's talking about the duality of man, write down duality of man. He's talking about the fact that in all of us, we're basically all split personalities to an extent. We all have this id, this basic childlike thing inside us that just wants to meet its immediate needs, and we have our superego and our ego, the society around us, which controls that. So the idea that we are all conflicted, that we all want to do the thing that gives us instant gratification, but that isn't what it means to be human. And whilst we are flawed and we do sometimes fall to that temptation, we should not give into it entirely, which is what he does with Hyde. So basically, I just want a big brainstorm of what your thoughts are about the conflict. He loves being Hyde, it's so exciting, and at the beginning he's able to distance himself from that, and he describes his conscience slumbered was the expression that he used earlier on in the text. Actually, I might use that in my essay, that's a good one. So once you kind of brainstorm what your thoughts are, you do need to then pick 2 or 3 moments in the novel where you think this conflict is shown. So for example, I would probably pick as one of mine when he takes the potion for the first time, because he uses, again, it's a similar technique to this one where he describes it as the most painful thing he's ever experienced, but also the most liberating thing he's ever experienced. And then you can talk about the wording in that particular section. If you look it up, he talks about leaping headlong into a sea of liberty. I'm misquoting that, but if you find it, you'll know the bit I mean. And he's basically using the metaphor to describe this sense of absolute freedom and diving out of civilization and into the world of doing whatever the heck you like, of debauchery and all of those things. So you'll see there are 2 bullet points. The reason there are 2 bullet points is because the first one is you have to talk about the extract, okay? And I would talk about 3 points if you can. You then need to have 3 points that you want to make from 3 examples in the novel, if you can. Again, if 2 is all you can manage, that's fine, but I tend to try and go for 3. But that has to come from somewhere else outside the extract. Now, if you do not use anything except what's in the extract, you can only get half marks, okay? So you must reference somewhere else in the novel, even just once, that can potentially get you a higher mark, but you need to do it properly. You need to do sort of half an essay on the extract and half an essay on the rest of the novel. Now there's 2 ways of doing it. You either take your 3 neon lines and you say what you want to say about them. That'll probably be a page and a half, maybe a bit longer, maybe 2 sides, depending on how quickly you can write. And you do those first, and then you bring in the novel and go, okay, so this links to the novel. Then you give me your 2 or 3, however many you can get done, examples from the novel. The other way I call the hokey cokey, where you go in and you go out. In, out, shake it all about. That's why I call it the hokey cokey. Oh, cringe, I know. It actually wasn't my idea, it's from someone else in the department. But anyway, what it means is you do 1 neon line and you do a really good squid paragraph on that. And then you go, and here's another example of this happening in the novel elsewhere. And then you go into the extract and then you go out into the novel and then you go back into the extract. So once you've talked about your 1 example in the novel, you then pick your 2nd neon line and you use that one and do a paragraph on that, and then you go back out again and you pick your 2nd example from the novel. Personally, that is my preference. When I write my essays, that's generally how mine come out. It's also partly, if you know you're quite a slow writer and you're worried that you'll run out of time in an exam, that kind of means that you're less likely to just write about the extract and then run out of time before you get to the novel. You're more likely to go extract, novel, oh, I've run out of time, I didn't get my last 2 points done, 1 on each. But that's not the end of the world, okay? There's no specific marks for getting a nice little conclusion in there. I mean, when you're practicing, I would recommend doing a nice little conclusion where you wrap it all up and answer the question. But if you can't do that in an exam, there's no specific marks for it, okay? So, once you have got your plan for what you're going to say, your 3 points for the extract, your 3 points that you're going to say, and with quotations, obviously, and circled the bits you're going to word level analyse on those, then you're ready to write your essay. And unlike a language answer, you won't have lots of statements, little short paragraphs with different statement, using adjectives, using verbs. You might have one statement at the top, which is quite a big point, that he uses it as an extended metaphor, and then you actually make, and your statement might be something like, the conflict is his battle between wanting to be good, but actually he gets more pleasure from being bad. That might then have lots and lots of points underneath it. Now, your development is going to be linking it to the themes of the novel. I am running out of time on my clock. So, context. The AO3 is worth 6 marks out of the 30. It is important. You need to talk about Victorian society, the fact they were conflicted, the fact they were repressed. There are notes on my PowerPoint on this. You can also talk about Darwinism and the idea that we were 2 things. We were both human trying to be godlike, but then we were animals as well. So that is where your development, if you're talking about this idea of the animal being caged, and you've done your squid up to the QUI word level analysis, you then come to the context point. I'm absolutely out of time, but you link it to Darwinism. You say Stevenson was linking it to Darwinism, and you explain further. And I'm going to stop there and see what you guys can produce. Please ask me questions on the VLE if you need any more help. Okay.